He was one of the world's most famous wrestlers until he hung up the spandex and went into politics. He became a mayor and then governor of Minnesota. Today, he spends half his year in Mexico and half here in Minnesota's Lake Country, but his views are anything but retiring. He says that the United States today is on the brink of fascism. He questions the official story of 9/11. And later in the show, he will tell us what Fidel Castro told him about the assassination of John F. Kennedy. He is, of course, Jesse Ventura, and he's my guest on this special edition of Inside USA. Jesse Ventura leads a pretty contemplative life these days, out of the spotlight's glare.
Generally, I'll come out here in the evenings and take at least 20 to 25 casts before or after dinner. We'll throw another one out there.
Which is not to say that he's lost his competitive edge. You pulled a 20-pound fish off this dock.
Easily, yeah. My wife got a 45-inch muskie, I got a 42-inch one. She caught a 28-inch walleye and a 29-inch walleye.
Does your wife generally beat you and everything?
No. She just probably has more time to fish at times than I do.
Sounds like an excuse to me.
No, it's like anything. If you do it more and do it more often, you're going to have more success than the person that doesn't.
I think she's just better.
You know, she might be. You know, in fishing, there's no better or worse. It's luck. That's why they call it fishing and not catching.
When we sat down to speak to him at his lakeside home, he'd been ruminating all week about going back into politics. It was just 48 hours after the filing deadline for the Minnesota Senate race. I talked to Terry, your wife, when we came in, and she said at an hour and a half before the filing deadline, your motorcycle was out in the garage and your riding clothes were by the door.
Yeah.
What was going on?
Well, I was contemplating going down and filing. And then we talked for another half hour, and then she said to me, "You've always believed in fate and destiny." And I said, "That's correct." And she said then, and we didn't know which way to go. And she said, "Then why don't we flip a coin?" And that's what I did. Right on the floor here, I took a quarter, and I said, "Heads, I'll file, tails, I won't." And I flipped the coin up in the air, and it landed on the floor, and it came up tails. So destiny, it was the flip of a coin ultimately in the end.
You really decided on the basis of a flip of a coin?
Because if the coin would have come up heads, I'd have gone down and filed.
I want to talk about the state of America. Maybe some of the reasons why you were tempted and why it's clearly still a possibility for you to re-enter political life. On page 2 of your book, you say the United States is on the brink of fascism. And that was probably finished almost a year ago.
We are. Fascism, by definition, is when corporations team up with organized religion and control the government. Do I have to say anything more? Wouldn't you say that we're on the brink if we're not there? It seems that corporate America, I don't believe that our military fights for the people anymore. I believe the military of the United States is now the strong arm of the corporate America.
One of the distinguishing features of fascism is not the slow or fast erosion of civil liberties, but living in a police state that doesn't allow for civil liberties. As a small L libertarian, you hold that to be one of the highest values in American life.
And where are we heading?
Well,
with the Patriot Act, we're having, I mean, last week the Democrats, who are supposedly opposite the Republicans, I don't believe that. I think it's like pro wrestling. I think that in front of the public, they make us think they're all angry at each other, but the reality is behind the scenes, they're all in rooms cutting deals and they're the best of buddies. And when you look at what the Democrats allowed to again happen a week ago, they destroyed the Fourth Amendment again. Illegal search and seizure. They gave Bush and resumed it. Excuse me, they're not in cahoots together.
So how do you solve it in wrestling when both sides are on the same side?
Well, the point of the matter is you're always on the same side in wrestling. You just portray it differently to the crowd, to the public, and that's what they do, I think.
Your book is called Don't Start the Revolution Without Me. How do you take back a system that you feel is on the brink of fascism in America today?
You have to get independents elected, and they have to go there, and we have to, in my opinion, we have to destroy these two political parties that are destroying our country. And I'm not alone in that thinking. If you go back to our founding fathers, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington, they all stated clearly that the downfall of the United States wouldn't come at the hands of an outside entity, that it would come from within. And they said it would come when political parties took over the government. I think they're there.
And yet at the same time, the vast majority of Americans, 75 or 80%, say that the country's going in the wrong direction. 9 out of 10 Americans say that there needs to be fundamental change in the healthcare system. Americans don't like the way that this country is going.
Yeah,
so your lemmings seem to be turning.
But they don't run that, but they don't vote that way, do they? Jefferson, one of his great quotes was, "Dissension is the greatest form of patriotism."
I'm just trying to reconcile this with the fact that you are a proud former Navy SEAL.
I'm patriotic. I love
speak a lot about having served in the
me.
military.
My brother's a Navy SEAL, my father's a World War II vet, and my mother was a World War II vet. I lived in a household with all 4 people served in the military at a time of war.
So do you identify with the pacifists?
Yes. I think war is the failure, the complete failure of politics. When politics fails, you have war. Well, clearly politics has failed because we have war.
What if war was the purpose of the politics?
Well, yeah, that may be it too. I don't know. I didn't make that decision, but I don't like it. And I don't like the fact that our country, it's destroying our economy. It backed me up the other day. The 2 major things that I've talked about in my politics has been the debt, which you don't hear either the Democrats or Republicans even come close to talking about. Why? Because they're both equal offenders and it's indefensible. We're over $9 trillion in debt now. Well,
I think, sorry, to be fair, I think the Democrats are talking about restoring a sense of balance in the country's finances. Whether or not they're sincere is another question.
Oh, no, they're not. Because number 2 on the list to restore our economy is get out of the war in Iraq. Well, if the Democrats are so for getting out of the war in Iraq, how come they haven't did it? They control both houses. You know what their response is? We can't override Bush's veto.
Right, but the political...
Wait. They don't need to. They
right.
control the money.
Yes, the spending bills have been passed consistently by the Democrats.
All they have to do is stop the money and you stop the war. But it's because they're on board. Remember when I told you about wrestling? And it shows me...
Okay, but hang on. The political reality for the Democrats is whatever they say the reason is. They know they'll get beat up in the elections by the Republicans as unpatriotic pacifists who are weak on terrorism and are putting the country at risk.
So in other words, they're making a political decision as opposed to what they really from their hearts believe?
Be called politics, right?
No, not in my world. In my world, you go with what you believe, whether it's popular or unpopular. You go with your values and where your heart is, and the hell with the next election. Anybody that voted for the war, in my opinion, should not hold public office because they were duped. And we don't have time to have leaders who can be duped.
You also have a policy proposal in your book about people who decide to go to war having to pay a price in their own family.
Well, you know, one thing right now about our economy, it's starting to suffer. And you know what the positive about that is, I see? Our country's finally starting to feel some pain from this war. All the money that we're losing, channeling into this country, that I don't understand what the benefit is for us in the end. I haven't profited. I haven't looked around and said, gee, since we've invaded Iraq, my life is somehow better. I would challenge any American to any United Statesian, because I don't use the term American if I can help it.
Especially since you've been living in Mexico.
Yes, any United Statesian, I would challenge them to come forward and tell me how they've benefited from the invasion and the war in Iraq.
Or perhaps they could ask an Iraqi.
Yeah, how have they benefited? Anyone. How does anyone benefit from war? Well, certain people do that make money off it. There's always profiteers in war, like Halliburton. They're making a fortune. And who used to be the president of Halliburton?
Let's make that a skill testing question. We've got to take a break, but I want to talk to you about JFK, Fidel Castro, and the CIA when we come back.